One day the protagonist woke up and realized he was alive once again. A mix of emotions hit him as he clenched his fists tightly. Tears streamed down his face, but they weren't from happiness. They were from pure rage. He had been given a second chance. A chance to finally take down that guy who wanted to turn him into his girl. But before that day that marked his ass, we need to go back 3 years when it all really started. The story begins with the protagonist waking up inside the game he was addicted to, called The Legend of Arhan's Heroine. The game was based on battles against demon kings, intense political conflicts, various routes that could be played, and most importantly, forming romantic relationships with the hot heroines.
Yeah, boy.
Upon arriving in this new world, Korenlok knew his role would be that of just an NPC, while the real protagonist would handle the battles. Despite feeling a whirlwind of new emotions, he remained calm, acting like a typical NPC and helping whoever needed it. For Korenlok, everything was under control. As the hero of the game, Park Sihoo would take care of any problems. However, something felt off. He decided to search for Park Sihoo in the city, but along the way, he overheard something strange. A character mentioned soda. Those words didn't belong in this world. It was then that Korenlok realized a shocking truth. The main hero, Park Sihoo, was also a reincarnated soul from Earth, a regular human who had coincidentally awakened in the body of the most powerful hero, destined to save the world. Korenlok decided to help Park Sihoo because he knew that only the hero of the game had access to the status system. He began giving suggestions and tips, confident in his experience, as he called himself the greatest player of the heroine Legend of Arhan, having played through all possible routes. He knew Park Sihoo could trust his help. While they were talking, they were caught off guard by a monster, but Park Sihoo quickly defeated it with ease, proving his strength and showing that he was worthy of being the hero of the world. After defeating all the monsters, Korenlok was satisfied. He felt like he was on the right path, as by helping Park Sihoo, he was indirectly protecting the world he loved so much, preventing its end, and perhaps even finding a way back to Earth. After the battle, Park Sihoo offered a low-level elixir to restore his strength. As he savored the drink, Korenlok began to wonder. Something is bothering me about this world. Where are the women? The main appeal of playing that game was the charm of the heroines and the relationships. However, Park Sihoo hadn't gotten involved with any of them. He only added them to the group when necessary. In the end, the group was full of men, and that wasn't exactly what Korenlok had expected. After months of living in that world, the protagonist began to notice that something was wrong. Strange events started happening. The granddaughter of the Sword Emperor died on her way to the entrance ceremony. The final boss of the first stage, Marette, simply vanished, and mysterious murders and disappearances became frequent. None of this followed the original game's chronological order. The plot was diverging from its story, and the most concerning part was Park Sihoo's behavior. His true personality was beginning to raise suspicions, something the protagonist should have questioned earlier. Suspicious, the protagonist decided to follow Park Sihoo, who secretly left every night. During one of these pursuits, he discovered an underground location. There, he found Marette Dinalef's staff, one of the game's heroines who had disappeared. How did her weapon end up here? But that was only the beginning. As he looked deeper, he spotted another secret weapon, the Odachi, which had also vanished when the heroine Alicia disappeared. What was going on there? Other lost weapons throughout the game were also in that place. That's when it hit him. That place was Park Sihoo's inventory. However, the most disturbing sight was yet to come. The protagonist stumbled upon a beautiful girl imprisoned. It was Marette Dinalef, the missing heroine. In that moment of shock, he was discovered by Park Sihoo, who, with a cold stare, asked, "What are you doing here?" The protagonist, overcome with rage, couldn't contain himself and demanded, "What is going on here?" He had never imagined that Park Sihoo could have found Marette earlier. With chilling indifference, Park Sihoo replied, "She's just a demon. I wouldn't waste the blood of an elder-class vampire." He then revealed the worst. He had been using Marette for his own purposes. Park admitted that the protagonist himself had consumed quite a bit of her blood, those elixirs he had been drinking. Upon remembering this, the protagonist felt a deep nausea and nearly vomited, disgusted by the revelation. As the protagonist stood in horror, trying to process what had happened, Park continued, explaining with disturbing calmness how he had spent a month setting a trap in the forest to capture Marette. Each word fueled the protagonist's rage even further, and he couldn't help but shout, "Why?" Without a trace of emotion, Park Sihoo replied, "To make the story of this world move faster. The route you wanted to follow was a waste. Saving those people? A waste of time. They were all useless and annoying, like Jaeger and Lark. I wasn't going to waste my time with people like them." At that moment, Korenlok realized the truth. From the very beginning, Park had been lying. That bastard. He was never a novice, he thought. Then Park spoke, with a dark smile. "Only 3 more deaths until I reach 100,000. Filled with fury, Korenlok grabbed Park's clothes and shouted, calling him a monster, demanding to know why he had done all of this. Park Sihoo, still calm, responded, "Wake up, they're just NPCs. You've killed plenty yourself." Korenlok, enraged, retorted, "The NPCs I killed were evil, beyond saving." His anger only grew as he processed everything that had happened. He questioned out loud, "You want to be the best to be efficient. So why the hell did you take the Odachi? You're a mage. Why would you take a secret weapon meant for knights? And why use Marette's blood to make elixirs? Why do all this senseless crap?" The truth was clear now. Park wasn't doing anything out of necessity or strategy. He just needed a punching bag to satisfy his sociopathic tendencies. Furious with the confrontation, Park Sihoo landed a brutal punch on Korenlok, shouting, "How dare you talk to me like that?" His eyes burned with rage as he continued, "Everything I did for you. This world should be mine. I am the center of everything here. And you're just an NPC who understands nothing, always meddling in everything. You're only interested in those worthless heroines." Park's expression showed that he was no longer holding back. The protagonist was completely disoriented, unable to grasp what was happening. What the hell does Park mean by this? He thought. He's not that kind of hero. We've been together for 199 chapters. Why is he suddenly changing the course of the story like this? Without hesitation, Park Sihoo responded, "I removed everything that could interfere with our future." Confused, Korenlok asked, "So, the reason why there were only men in our group was because of that?" "Yes, you don't need to worry. The others were there just for me to observe. The only one I truly love is you, Korenlok." Desperate, Korenlok punched Park, shouting, "You're so weird, you pervert. I'm really scared. I've never even had a girlfriend before." He tried to run, but before he could escape, magical chains, resembling tentacles, wrapped around him, trapping him in a humiliating manner. Korenlok never imagined it would end like this, being touched so invasively. With an obsessive gaze, Park calmly said, "You will never escape. Korenlok, you will be mine forever. In this fake world, you're the only real one." Terrified, Korenlok screamed, "Stop it! You're scaring me!" Unfazed, Park replied, "Don't worry. It will all be over soon. Once the final battle ends, we'll be together forever, my dear." Park imprisons Korenlok with a powerful spell and departs for the final battle. In a completely dark environment, a message from the system appears in the air. The final stage is beginning. Still trapped, Korenlok feels despair rising within him. This is the end, he thinks. Park had always been incredibly strong, defeating every enemy on his own. There was no doubt he would also defeat the final boss. When he defeats the boss, what will happen to me? He wonders, distressed. Suddenly, a new message appears in the air. The player has died. The challenge has failed. Korenlok can hardly believe it. Park lost. A mix of relief and surprise washes over him, knowing that, for now, his life, and more importantly, his dignity, are safe. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Korenlok suddenly awakens at the exact moment he first arrived in that world. He had been thrown back in time, given a new chance to change the course of the story, and this time, he knew what had to be done. With fierce determination, Korenlok thinks, "I will have to kill that wretched Park Sihoo. I have to kill a player and save my ass." In the past, Korenlok went through many moments without ever understanding that guy's reaction, but now it all makes sense. In the past, at the Ratian River, the flood incident occurred. During the mission to conquer the aquatic monsters, the dam burst, killing everyone in a nearby village. Thousands of monsters and people drowned. At the time, our protagonist hadn't understood that evil laughter. Even though countless people had died, Park Sihoo simply saw it as an opportunity to monopolize the experience points. "He's a demon. I need to stop him now." The protagonist realizes that Park Sihoo is only rank 5 as well and must be defeated because, in 5 days, Park Sihoo will attend the entrance ceremony at Merkaba Academy, where he will receive status upgrades and become a monster. Korenlok realizes that this is his only chance to kill Park Sihoo and runs at full speed to find him. Tutorial mission. The carriage on its way to Merkaba broke down in the middle of a monster-infested forest. While they tried to repair it, a young man praised Park Sihoo, and an old man reported that everything was almost ready. However, they were caught off guard when a tree came flying toward them. Mr. Leon managed to push Ms. Laura out of the way, but soon they were faced with a rank 2 werewolf. Korenlok, watching from afar, realized he was too late to save the 2 knights, who tried to resist but were slaughtered by the monster. Now, Korenlok watched the werewolf approach Park Sihoo. He needed to know, would Park be the hero to save the world, or was he a player possessed, destined for destruction? Before the fight could begin, a woman appeared, surprised to see the werewolf block her blade. "Stand back, I'll kill this monster," she said. Alicia Arden, the second daughter of the Arden family and wielder of the Odachi, one of the king's 6 swords, was a renowned heroine. Then Korenlok witnessed the unthinkable. Park Sihoo stabbed Alicia in the back with a poisoned dagger. In that instant, it became clear to him Park was a true villain who deserved to die. As she was wounded, Alicia questioned why he had attacked her so cowardly. Feeling the effects of the poison, Park simply replied that he was nervous and his hand slipped, but his expression betrayed the lie. Before she could react, Alicia was attacked by the werewolf. Korenlok knew he couldn't let her die, as her weapon was incredibly valuable, and after this incident, Park Sihoo could join the group of Lunia Arden, a renowned swordsman. Even poisoned, Alicia fought bravely against the werewolf. Focusing her energy, she activated her focus ability and delivered a powerful finishing blow. Realizing Alicia was about to defeat the monster, Park tried to throw another dagger to finish her off, but Alicia, enraged, blocked the attack. She understood then that Park Sihoo was trying to kill her. Before she could confront him, the werewolf attacked again, but with her quick reflexes, Alicia countered and struck the monster's head. However, the poison in her body quickly took effect, and she collapsed on the ground, writhing in pain. Alina Arden was lying there, barely conscious, and asked why Park Sihoo had attacked her. Excited about his new sword, he paid no attention to her. Even though he knew the sword could only be used with a special ability, he decided to worry about that later. Suddenly, Park decided he was going to kill Alina to gain more experience, and she began to cry, knowing her end was near. Before he could do so, Korenlock threw a bag of mushroom powder, the favorite food of the forest monsters. The white powder covered Park, and the monsters saw him as fresh meat. Furious, Park tried to understand what was happening but was soon attacked by 3 monsters. Meanwhile, Korenlock seized the opportunity to save Alina. He noticed a dagger lodged in the mouth of the dead werewolf and took it. But suddenly, Park Sihoo reappeared, having killed the monsters in a minute. That's when he realized it was Korenlock who had thrown the powder. Park Sihoo looks at Korenlock furiously and asks, "What are you doing here, you bastard?" Korenlock realizes that Park Sihoo has lost his previous memories and thinks he's just another NPC in the game. Korenlock taunts him, "You don't even know how to hold a sword. You're going to end up losing your hand." Taking advantage of Park's distraction, he moves in and throws sand into Park's eyes. Park Sihoo panics, releasing wild and uncoordinated attacks. He may be clumsy, but he's incredibly fast. Korenlock knows the fight won't be easy, so he charges at Park Sihoo with everything he has, relentlessly attacking with 2 daggers, not giving Park any time to breathe. Park begins to panic from the violence of the attacks and tries to defend himself as best he can. In one swift, precise move, Korenlock stabs Park's chest, causing him to groan in pain. Before Park can react, Korenlock prepares for the next strike. Park tries to block, but the protagonist remembers the past, how he became stronger thanks to Park Sihoo. Even so, Korenlock feels no regret. With all his strength, he pierces Park's throat, ending him for good and cutting the evil at its root. Suddenly, a new system message appears. Error, player dead. Calculating the probability of main scenario completion. Recommending the best backup world option. Variant, Korenlock, transferring backup and minimum status in case of scenario collapse. Initiating subplayer succession. Korenlock, AAA class knight. Martial Master Successor, Subplayer. Korenlock had just become a subplayer, but before he could understand his new privileges, he heard groans of pain. He had forgotten about Alina. "Alina, are you okay?" he asks, worried. Alina, gasping, responds, "I'm not. I can't see, only speak." Korenlock examines her symptoms and recognizes the poison. It might be peacock frog venom, an extremely potent toxin that couldn't be made without a combination window. Additionally, she still had a werewolf's horn lodged in her stomach. He needed to act fast. Skillfully, Korenlock begins to stop the bleeding caused by the poisoned dagger. He's dealt with situations like this before and knows what to do. To prevent Alina from biting her own tongue in pain, he places Park Sihoo's hand in the way and asks her to bite down as hard as she can while he removes the werewolf's horn. As he performs first aid, Korenlock reflects on everything that has happened over the last 3 years. He killed a player but saved a person, and that's enough for him. "Don't worry, Alina. I'll prepare the antidote," he says, determined. Still weak, she asks, "What is the name of my savior?" Korenlock, determined to keep his identity a secret, replies that it's better not to tell. As the antidote gets ready, Korenlock begins thinking about the future. Now that Park Sihoo is dead, the world will need a new hero to defeat the villains and the final boss. He decides that he will be that hero and bring peace to the world. As he checks his new abilities, he realizes that as a sub-player, he won't have access to all the systems. Though excited by the status window, he is quickly frustrated by the lack of the main player's privileges. But that doesn't matter. In the last 3 years, Korenlock has dedicated himself fully. He knows he's no longer just a background character. He will be the hero. "As I thought, I still have access to this magic," Korenlock reflects as he prepares. The only magic he managed to master over the last 3 years was runes, ancient letters that hold immense power. Duty, restriction, and oath. These runes, known as the 3 commandments, are the most powerful laws in this world. They grant both superhuman strength and destruction. "Let's begin," he says to himself, as he starts engraving the words onto his body, feeling unbearable pain. First commandment, duty. This rune grants the caster extra power when they fulfill a self-imposed oath. Korenlock decides what his first oath will be. "I will not turn a blind eye to the misfortunes of good people." With this, Korenlock's status will increase every time he completes this mission. However, failure will result in a penalty of 10 points. Second rune, restriction. Korenlock decides to impose the inability to perceive spirits. In this world, all things emanate spiritual perception, and spiritual beings cannot attack those who are unconscious or without spiritual awareness. Thus, Korenlock becomes immune to astral beings. Disobedience to this rule will result in a 600% damage increase from all opponents targeting him. By activating the restriction, his hit rate against astral beings is reduced to 0%, while his hit rate against material beings increases by 50%. Korenlock has exploited a loophole in the system to create a shield against all astral beings in the world. Third commandment, Oath. This is the riskiest of all. Neither Korenlock nor Park dared to make it in their previous lives. But now, with Park Sihoo defeated and the entire system available, Korenlock feels there is no longer any reason to hesitate. He makes the heaviest oath of all. I will save this world. It is the highest ambition of a warrior. The commandments have been completed. They will be applied to the subplayer. Failing to fulfill the oath will result in inevitable death. After days of being unconscious, Alicia finally woke up, still confused. Where am I? She asked. In the emergency hospital in Merkaba City, the nurse replied. And where is the person who brought me here? Alicia inquired. He just left, and you still can't move, the nurse advised. Alicia, processing the situation, responded. I see. And my backpack? This belt still has blood on it. Nurse, where can I buy honey bombs? 3 days after the tutorial mission, the day of the entrance ceremony at Merkaba Academy arrived. Korenlock was searching for his student ID when he found a letter from his mother, wishing him success and expressing how proud she was. Become a strong man and protect people, the letter read. Korenlock wondered when she had placed the letter there. Although the NPC Korenlock was just a normal and incompetent child, he also had a family. It had been hard at first to adjust to a new family, but they treated him well. Over time, he began to love his family as much as he loved that world. This was the difference between Korenlock and Park Sihoo. Korenlock was impressed by the number of trains and people around him. That's when a beautiful girl caught his attention. Wow, are you a new student too? She asked. Yes, my name is Korenlock, he replied. You're really tall. You must have eaten a lot when you were a kid. Want a potato? The girl joked. Marette then explained that this was the crafting workshop, where students conducted magical research, and over there was the training room, filled with incredible weapons. Korenlock knew what the future held for Marette, as she was the final boss of the first act. Alright everyone, Marette said, asking everyone to grab a potato and wishing luck to the new students. The spatial expansion magic began, and the students started to float. Korenlock already knew what was about to happen. He briefly explained the history of the world, where the population had been locked in a long battle against the evil tribe, and the most effective weapon against them was the superhumans, capable of using mana and aura. Merkaba, the Guardian Academy, was the place that trained these superhumans. A familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. It was from Damon, the knight's instructor. He welcomed the new students but quickly got to the point. You all want to become mages or knights, but don't think so highly of yourselves, you little brats. We're going to test your abilities now. Even after becoming a sub-player, Korenlock realized his attributes were still poor, and he was placed in rank 6, the worst rank of all. Vermac Damon instructed everyone to stand in front of their assigned rank and wish them luck. A teacher was observing the potential candidates of that season. Among them were Alicia Arden, granddaughter of the Sword Genius, Dran Warsky, mercenary sword master, Chronoliden, goblin sorcerer, and Warren, the celestial Yiksha, first of the rank. What is the director thinking, accepting that child? Another teacher questioned. Is there any merit in testing ranks 6 and 5? He asked. The director instructed that all students must participate. Don't disagree with him, you worm, the teacher responded. Korenlock was transported to a training room, where, in 30 seconds, a horde of monsters would appear according to the player's level. Typically, beginners would start by choosing a sword, and Korenlock had done that in his past life. However, he knew the saying. It takes hundreds of days to use a spear, thousands of days to use a blade, and millions of days to use a sword. So, he chose a spear. With years of experience killing wolves, Korenlock tore through the monsters with ease, showing that despite his rank, his experience placed him on a whole different level. Korenlock needed only 12 seconds to defeat all the weak monsters. In his mind, they were no challenge at all, but this time, he was determined. He was going to kill everything until he ranked up. After 5 minutes without any new monsters appearing, Korenlock began to think that the system might be malfunctioning. Meanwhile, the professor observed the rank 5 students struggling to defeat the wolves. At his peak strength, the professor would have taken only 1 minute and 22 seconds to finish those monsters. But what was happening with that student standing still? The professor wondered if the monsters had been summoned correctly or if it was some kind of bug. He decided to summon another wave of monsters. After that, the first rank 5 student finally finished his fight in 7 minutes. The professor glanced again at the rank 6 students and saw Corinlock still standing there. Why is this kid just standing there? He wondered. Another professor mentioned that, in 20 years, Madame Josephine's test had never had any glitches. Something was wrong. It was possible that the monsters hadn't been summoned correctly. Meanwhile, Corinlock yelled, "Why do they keep sending dogs? I'm not a dog trainer, damn it!" He obliterated all the monsters in just 7 seconds, leaving both professors astonished. They called Professor Fermac and asked what the speed record for 3rd and 4th rank students was. Fermac responded that a boy named Jaeger had set a time of 3 minutes. "Why do you ask?" he inquired. "He's good with a spear, probably the son of a hunter." All the professors began to pay close attention to Corinlock, who was now defeating rank 4 monsters and preparing to face a rank 3. Corinlock demonstrated his expertise with the spear, delivering brutal blows to the monster. When he decided to activate the Kenas rune, he set the owl on fire, but the flames weren't enough to defeat it. Corinlock's true plan was to block the monster's vision, and then strike a fatal blow to its head. Everyone was shocked to see a rank 6 student using a rune. Clearly, he wasn't an ordinary rank. "It's a shame the test only summons monsters up to rank 3, remarked the second professor. "Finally, someone interesting has appeared. I can't wait to see him fight evil spirits." The spirit test began, and Corinlock sensed something was off, but he couldn't see or hear what had been summoned due to the restriction penalty. He tested for a minute to see if the spirits could attack him, but realizing he couldn't fight them, he decided to forfeit the test. "That kid gave up. Who the hell is he?" thought the professor. All the students were gathered in the gym, awaiting their results, when Jaeger Hinchpeter appeared. In Corinlock's past life, Jaeger had clashed with Park Sihoo, who eventually killed him out of irritation. Now, Jaeger was an arrogant delinquent, mocking the rank 5 students as losers. Corinlock also recognized another student, Lark, who had an inferiority complex and always spoke ill of Sihoo and himself. In the past, Lark had met the same fate as Jaeger. The academy's headmaster, Arya Khazar, began his speech, talking about how everyone had entered the academy to become stronger. Some already had what it took, while others still needed much effort. He reminded them that their path would be decided by themselves and that the academy was only there to help them take the first step. Jaeger, proud of being rank 3, asked Lark what his rank was. When Lark said he was rank 5, Jaeger laughed, calling him pathetic for not being able to defeat a dog or ghost. Corinlock then approached and said, "Hey guys, wow, your tattoo is amazing. The artist must be really talented. That letter in the red part is your blood type, right? To make it easier for a transfusion if you get hurt, huh?" Jaeger confirmed, explaining that his mother was a tattoo artist and he had requested an old school style tattoo. Corinlock already knew this from his past life, when Jaeger's mother came to the academy after his disappearance, explaining that the tattoos were a gesture of love and concern for her son. Corinlock introduced himself and asked for their names. At that moment, Princess Alicia noticed that Corinlock had helped a classmate who was being bullied and thought he seemed like a good person. But in truth, Corinlock knew that Lark had the ability to memorize and had once found a free skill book. "Even his smile is nice," thought Alicia, intrigued. "What kind of person is he?" Merkaba offers several facilities free of charge to students, such as dormitories and affordable cafeterias. However, the most recommended facility is the training room, where even impossible things become possible. Corinlock commented that there he could even fight against invisible spiritual entities, something unimaginable elsewhere. While Corinlock was practicing, other students watched from afar, laughing. "Look at that, a freshman trying to fight a spiritual entity, something we don't even do until the 2nd semester," they said, mocking his efforts. Despite the taunts, Corinlock kept training, even though he took many hits. Suddenly, the instructor appeared and asked why he was practicing with a spiritual entity. Corinlock replied that he wanted to improve his spear skills. The instructor asked if he was confident he could do it, and with conviction, Corinlock answered yes. The instructor smiled and said, "That's the spirit. Here, take 10 meal tickets. If you succeed, come find me, and I'll praise you." Corinlock felt a bit nervous, thinking the instructor might have been suspicious of something he did during the entrance exam, but soon realized the old man was just being kind. As Corinlock trained intensely, taking hit after hit, Marette Dunalev watched from afar. She approached, offered him water, and suggested that he rest, saying he just needed to get the hang of it. Corinlock thanked her but knew there wouldn't be a next time. 3 years ago, there might have been, as back then he had Park Sihoo, the player's stats window, and the ability to craft potions. But Park Sihoo was no longer there. He had been killed. "Thank you, Marette, but I think we can always quit later," he said. Corinlock knew he needed to get stronger. He decided to test the limits of his past abilities. He began using various techniques: Dark Serpent Thrust, Tiger Wind Strike, Block Counter, and many others. He was never the strongest physically, but he always worked harder than anyone else to overcome his limits. With a serious expression, he used the Dark Serpent Thrust of Deep Justice, launching the weapon with such force that the impact was impressive. Marette, watching the training, thought that words like strong or exceptional didn't do Corinlock justice. "Are you okay, freshman?" she asked, concerned. Realizing he was pushing himself too hard, Corinlock decided he needed to train his body even more. Meanwhile, Marette took the new students on a tour of the academy, enthusiastically showing exploring the facilities, but Corinlock could only think about how to improve. He knew the only way to achieve that was through the mandates. Shortly after, Lark appeared and invited Corinlock to eat and discuss grimoires. Grimoires are skill books that allow one to acquire magic by reading them. Merkaba's library is vast and should be a source of knowledge, but Corinlock knew it was really used to hide rare grimoires. He reminded Lark of his promise to meet the conditions to access a grimoire. Lark was a dedicated student who memorized all kinds of magic but couldn't use them effectively due to his low mana level. As they talked, Corinlock knocked over some books, which triggered a secret passage. Lark, surprised, asked how he knew about the passage. Corinlock, with a devilish grin, said it was time to fulfill the promise. Lark hesitated but knew he would have to help Corinlock repel evil spirits. Without warning, Corinlock punched Lark in the face and said, "Let's get started. Our protagonist knows that there is a special mission in this hidden place. To complete his objective from the very beginning, he decides to use Lark. However, there's a problem. Sabansia Duque, a powerful evil spirit. This mission was designed to be impossible. Sabansia Duque was a general duke who commanded the south 800 years ago. Most players die at the very start, but Corinlock is not one of them. He has one limitation: he cannot see spirits. Sabansia Duque uses all his strength to cast numerous spells, but none of them hit Corinlock. Even Sabansia Duque is confused as to why he cannot hit the protagonist. Corinlock realizes that something strange is happening but remains unaffected by the Duke's attacks. So, he offers Lark's body to be possessed. Corinlock explains that in this world, certain factors can turn ordinary humans into demi-humans, like vampires or werewolves. One day, Sabansia Duque turned into a vampire and killed his own servant. He tried to control his instincts but failed. Fearing he would kill his wife and daughter, he sent everyone away and stayed in the castle, using magic to seal his soul in a book, the grimoire inside the library. Corinlock chose Lark because, once possessed by the evil spirit, Lark could use his physical abilities to their fullest, even though he had the lowest strength stat in the game. Corinlock easily dodges the attacks from the possessed Lark and punches him in the head, knocking him out. He feels sorry for Lark, but this is the best strategy to complete the Duke's mission. All he has to do is kill Lark, and Corinlock will receive high-level items like the Duke's cape and vampire armor. These items were once used by Park Sihoo and played a significant role in future incidents. But Corinlock is different from him. Sabansia Duque is curious about the story of his wife and daughter, and how they lived after he was sealed. Corinlock starts telling many stories to the Duke, such as how his wife died after leaving the castle and how his daughter became an incredible adventurer who traveled the world. Corinlock didn't like the method Park used, so he decided to help this poor soul. Corinlock asks if his answer satisfied the Count. The Count apologizes for attacking the protagonist and thanks him for telling him about his family's past. Before ascending, Corinlock asks the Count for a favor, and they have a long conversation. Our protagonist obtains two items. First, an epic item, Sabansia Duque's special evil spirit winged dust. Second, the grimoire, the book where Sabansia Duque's soul was sealed. This book contains abilities and spells that can be learned by reading it. After reading the grimoire, Corinlock gains a new ability, Persistent Warrior Regeneration. This was the same ability that Park Sihoo had, but Park never truly got injured enough to know how much it regenerates. Then, Corinlock wakes Lark. Lark isn't feeling well. An evil spirit had possessed his body. Lark asks if being possessed by spirits hurts, and Corinlock cynically responds that he doesn't know, then hands the grimoire to Lark. Our protagonist reveals that the final reason for choosing Lark was that he likes seeing people who work hard be rewarded. Duty. He will not turn a blind eye to the misfortunes of good people. Duty execution. Sabansia Duque, difficulty B, reward, 80 points, distributed equally. Corinlock is surprised by the high reward since, in the game, players usually gain only 5 stat points per level. This means he leveled up 16 times at once. He didn't receive a level up notification, so the first level mission reward of 80 points compensates for not gaining stat points directly. Then, the system shows that he fulfilled the mandate of duty, even though he didn't fully understand the real effect of his rune. He gained 40 points for not ignoring Lark Bergman's misfortunes and 40 more points for not ignoring Sabansia Duque's misfortunes. The next day, Corinlock goes to the Vigor training room. Marette is already there, offering potatoes to all the students during the explanation. She asks if he's going to capture spiritual entities again, and Corinlock replies that he is. With a bright smile, Marette wishes the freshman good luck, saying she'll be cheering for him. Around them, other students are frustrated with Marette's attention to Corinlock. Don't give false hope to the freshman, Marette thinks. He's only ranked 50th. So, Marette decides to bet 2 gold coins on Corinlock. All the students get excited and start betting against the protagonist. Corinlock is irritated by being the subject of bets. After all, he just wanted to train. So, he decides to ignore everyone and test the new stats he gained after helping the Duke ascend. Corinlock starts with the most basic ability. The previous day, he used the Crawling Serpent technique, a difficult move tied to the calamity of the serpent. With the most basic technique, Serpent's Omen, he defeats the spirit with a single devastating blow. Everyone is shocked to see the spirit killed with just one strike, and even Corenlock can't believe his own strength. Marette observes that he used to need 3 strikes, but today, he managed with just 1. Corenlock is surprised, realizing that Marette must have been watching since yesterday. Besides being a mage capable of tracking the calamity of the serpent with her eyes, what kind of incredible ocular ability does she possess? Marette offers him a portion of the bet since she won a lot of money, so she thinks it's only fair to give him his share. She asks if he doesn't like gambling, and Corenlock replies that of course he does. Who doesn't like money? Marette is so clever, and they both laugh. At night, our protagonist remembers his past life, where he struggled to improve his martial arts. Even so, he still can't complete the 5th of the 6 steps to enlightenment. He has a long way to go, but he's improving with the spear faster than he imagined. The problem is the magic rune Hagalars. The player has very little mana. This problem wasn't solved even in the protagonist's past life, so he needs to find a solution to become stronger than before. Suddenly, a female voice calls to him. No matter how much you improve your spear skills and master rune magic, in this academy, there is one bastard who cannot be defeated. The only female character that even Park Sihoo couldn't kill, one of the strongest in the game's story, the inflexible Jiangxi, the celestial Yuxia. Waran. Corenlock tries to ignore her, knowing she's a ticking time bomb he can't deal with. But she speaks again and knows that he is not the rightful owner of that body. Corenlock begins to sweat, not understanding how she could possibly know that. A living being that carries the souls of both humans and monsters within its body, like Jianxi Waran, is precisely that type of contradictory existence. It is said that the eyes of those who are between life and death can see the color of souls, so it must feel strange for her not to be able to see this. She asks Corenlock how it feels to crush and consume the original soul. Corenlock responds that he doesn't know, as he used to worry about that in his previous life. Corenlock and I are different people. The memories of Corenlock, which mixed with mine, are not truly mine either. So who is the me who attended an all-boys elementary and high school, studied kinesiology in college, and had a military career? However, this may be different for Waran, as the original soul still resides in that body. Waran repeats that Corenlock isn't the owner of this body, and calls him a thief and a criminal with no right to that body. Corenlock tells an old story from his homeland. There's someone who turns into a green giant when he gets angry, named Bruce. You've heard of him, right? The interesting thing is that Bruce has 2 personalities that oppose and hate each other, which is cool because they are good at very different things. Anyway, Corenlock explains that whether it's the original soul or the newly formed one, both have different characteristics and must coexist, as both were born into one body, and there's no sin in being born. Waran grows irritated and says that, for some, being born is a sin. Corenlock understands the pain of this 3-year-old child, but it's not a good time for them to talk, so he says goodbye. The next day, Corenlock woke up earlier than usual, as he often does. South of the academy is the mission board, where small and large tasks help level up in preparation for the next main mission. It's a necessary path for him to progress. He wanted to test something beforehand, but he was curious about Alicia, who was staring at him. Come to think of it, he didn't have much information about her, as in his previous life, that wretched Park Sihoo had eviscerated her. Alicia Arden greets the protagonist. He asks if she's been doing missions since the first week, given that she's rank 2 and doesn't seem desperate for results. Alicia replies that she needs the money. Corenlock asks if the support funds for rank 2 aren't substantial. Alicia explains that her family is in the top 10% of earners, so the school doesn't offer financial support. Besides, her parents are lenient, and she needs to earn enough to cover her expenses. Corenlock sees that she's in a complicated situation and suggests a patrol mission. It pays immediately, and the cost-benefit is great. Alicia is very happy and asks if Corenlock will join her, as the mission accepts up to 3 people. Corenlock declines, saying he has personal matters to attend to. Corenlock picks a mission to find a missing cat. The experience and pay are small, but that doesn't matter because his goal is the mandate. If the cat is saved from the monsters, he can prevent the owner from suffering the loss of the pet and falling into depression. After completing the mission, the mandate takes effect, and he earns 5 points equally distributed as a reward. Corenlock starts laughing like a madman, realizing that even the most trivial missions grant him status improvements. A frightened child runs off, calling him weird. Corenlock then begins to do every charitable act possible. He saves a boy from bullying, recovers a ring, and even tackles a mission more important than points, one he wrote on paper before leaving. A chef appears, frustrated because he can't create the ultimate sauce, having already used more than 10 ingredients unsuccessfully for the perfect chicken. Suddenly, Corenlock shows up at the door and tells the old man to add starch syrup, solving the problem, and leaves. The chef doesn't believe it and thinks Corenlock is just crazy, but after adding the syrup, he finally finds the supreme flavor. Corenlock sees this mission as important. After all, for the Koreans in this world, surviving without Yangnyeom chicken would be tough. Once again, he fulfills the mandate. Corenlock is shocked to realize that even by serving his own interests, he gains points. He starts yelling and laughing like a lunatic in the middle of the city, because there's nothing wrong with wanting Yangnyeom chicken. From afar, Waran watches watches and calls him weird but is surprised by the presence of the mage since permission is needed to leave. The two exchange glances, and Warren remembers Korenlaka's words about there being no sin in being born, recalling her past with a man who screamed that she should never have been born. A few days later, the hunting field will finally begin. The mage explains that first-year students will be evaluated through survival tasks in the field. If they reach the cabin in the north, at the end of the forest, they will pass. Please, all students, wear your rank armbands. When you reach the cabin, you can return them. Depending on how long it takes, you will receive fewer points, which can be exchanged for prizes. Korenlak looks for Warren, who does not participate in practical activities. Alicia, did you manage to complete the mission? Alicia responds that thanks to Korenlak, she now has enough for her expenses. Korenlak asks if she would like a sweet, saying his sister can't eat it. Alicia is overjoyed and asks if Korenlak will join her, as the mission allows up to 3 people. She really likes that sweet. Suddenly, the test begins. The mage starts using her magic to teleport the students. Korenlak knows that the only mage capable of casting spatial magic for this many people is Madame Josephine, known as the Great Witch. The hunting field is an important event where even professionals need multiple attempts. It's a battle royale system where you start in a random location and must earn points by stealing others' armbands. Korenlak doesn't want to waste time with small fry. He's aiming for rank 2. Alicia has a blue armband, and since Warren isn't present, as long as he can deal with Alicia, the rest will be easy points. Alicia doesn't know it, but the sweet she ate contains a tracking rune, which will allow Korenlak to find her. Meanwhile, the protagonist, with a sinister smile on his face, runs through the forest, calling out for Alicia. The witch decides to enter the forest to supervise the students, but she has a worried expression as that child disappeared. The witch asks if the president sent her into the forest. The president replies that no, she went on her own. The president suspects that Warren had a change of heart. Alicia is surrounded by the bodies of defeated students. Suddenly, a hidden student tries to attack her, but he is hit by a stone thrown by Korenlak. Alicia thinks she has just been saved by the main character, but then he tries to hit her instead. She is confused, wondering why she was attacked, as she trusted him because he gave her a candy earlier. Korenlak smiles and says that Alicia can become a good person too if she hands over her armband. Alicia is a rank 2 knight with a pure fighting style, but she hasn't yet mastered the Vigilant Eyes ability. She's incomparable to her prodigy sister, but Alicia is still among the top 1%. Alicia can't believe the pressure that Korenlak is putting on her. She underestimated our protagonist. His strategy of invading her space with close-range attacks is making the battle difficult for Alicia, but he has some openings. Alicia tries to counterattack with a quick strike, but Korenlak knows that her lack of practice, relying too much on her natural talent, will be her downfall. Korenlak uses a technique to block the attack, dodging the incoming strikes. After that, he uses the capture ability to push her weapon down and finishes with the pierce technique in a straight line. By combining these 3 basic techniques, he creates the ultimate counterattack, the essence of the spear's determination. Korenlak strikes Alicia violently. She barely manages to block it with her aura, or she could have been seriously injured. He may not be super strong or fast, but his mastery over each skill is no joke. He's not a rank 5 knight, and Alicia admits defeat. Korenlak plans to make good use of her armband, but before he can celebrate, he's attacked by a magical sword made of heavy iron, which is 4 times denser than regular iron. Being hit by it means, damn, it's Dran Warsky. He didn't want to fight him now. Even after fighting so many people, Dran doesn't have a single scratch on him. He must be enjoying this. Dran Warsky is surprised to see Korenlak block the heavy iron sword, but Dran wants the blue armband and demands that Korenlak drop it and leave. Korenlak doesn't think it's a good idea to fight now and decides to run. Dran Warsky can't believe Korenlak ran. What's wrong with that idiot? He starts chasing Korenlak furiously. As Korenlak runs, Alicia follows him because she doesn't want to die and doesn't even know where the exit is. Korenlak doesn't want to fight anymore. He just wants to take the armband to the booth. However, when he arrives, he's surprised by Chronoleden, a golem sorcerer, blocking the way. In front of him is Chronol, and behind him is Dran. Korenlak tried to avoid a fight, but now he's going to have to face 2 named guys at once. Alicia can't believe Korenlak is going to try and fight both at the same time. Korenlak knows there's no way to run, so the only choice is to face them. Alicia watches the fight carefully. With minimal movement, he dodged the swords he couldn't block, guiding them toward the golem. He quickly moved behind Dran and used him as a shield against the golem's attacks. While Dran was blocking the golem, Korenlak attacked the golem's crystals and neutralized them, quickly defeating Chronol. The speed of his reaction, judgment, and even his psychological fortitude were like that of someone who had fought on battlefields many times. Basic spear techniques combined with experience. It was like watching Alicia's sister. Alicia remembers Korenlak's advice and decides to work harder to become stronger. Dran admits he underestimated Korenlak. It seemed like Korenlak already knew his abilities. Who is this rank 5? Korenlak explains explains that golems are big targets for small but powerful opponents. Chronal needs a friend to cover his back. Chronal replies that he doesn't have any friends, so Cornlock wishes him good luck. That day, the 3 named students from the first year would remember Cornlock in their own ways. Cornlock takes first place, holding 3 blue armbands. Impressive, said the teacher. Now, the strongest person left among the participants in the hunting grounds is the druid protected by the forest, Yule. However, the participants are not the only ones present. The strongest person is the academy mage Marette Dunilef from Merkaba. The seniors were playing the role of monsters and helping with practical training. After Marette used magic to form a large water bubble and attacked Yule, the battle ended quickly. Marette went to check on Yule to see if everything was okay, and suddenly, Warren appeared. Marette asks Warren if he is looking for someone, as he's only gathered people who look similar. Warren ignores her and continues on his way, but the mage creates a thick ice wall. Excuse me, sorry, you can ignore me, but according to the rules, Marette is a monster and can't be ignored. Warren finds this situation annoying. Cornlock is finally going to decide on his reward after earning 117 points. There are options like a boar sharpening knife, a protective leather coat, and bear shark bile. The most valuable item is the bear shark bile, but Cornlock already has a prize in mind, a mandrake seed. The professor comments that the MC has a good eye and asks what he'll buy with the remaining 17 points. Cornlock decides to buy plant nutrients and ear protection. Cornlock finishes his shopping session. Despite countless hours in this game, things have never gone so well, especially after seeing those 2 guys become friends. Jaeger came in second place with 19 points, and Lark came in third with 15 points. Cornlock is pleased with their work and asks them to help Chronal search for the defeated golem's core, as it's valuable. Chronal appreciates the help. Our protagonist has worked with Chronal a lot in the past life since there aren't many tanks as good at attracting monsters and dealing damage as golems. Chronal is relieved that the core is intact. Alicia is injured, Dron's battle power is 0, and Yule is dead, or at least that's what the protagonist thought. However, Yule comments that Marette is way too dramatic. Suddenly, a loud crash echoes through the forest, and animals and monsters start running desperately. Yule warns them that it's best to flee because Marette is fighting Warren. A natural ability to analyze magic, along with an abundant amount of mana, a mage who has never experienced despair, frustration, or failure. Marette Dunilef truly is a genius. She's on track to follow in Professor Josephine's footsteps. Marette only needs to manage the difficulty moderately and help the freshmen evolve. For her, this is all a game. Now, however, Marette is injured and out of breath. She needs to analyze her opponent. Warren leaps toward Marette, and she responds by using ice magic, but it has no effect on Warren. Marette knows she won't win with basic magic. Though she promised her teachers not to use magic above intermediate level, she's already starting to use advanced spells. In other words, even using her entire arsenal of magic, it wasn't enough to match Warren. Marette is hit by a powerful kick from Warren and is thrown several meters, colliding with a tree. What stood before Marette wasn't a knight or a mage, but a natural disaster in human form. Marette, now desperate, tells him to stay away from her as she tries to cast another spell. Suddenly, Josephine appears to intervene. Marette, are you okay? But before Marette could respond, she passes out from exhaustion. Cornlock heard about the fight between the top second-year student and the top first-year student. He was scared because Marette could have awakened as a boss ahead of schedule. She seems fine for now, so everything is going according to the original plot. There are still about 3 weeks left before she awakens. What triggers Marette to become the first boss, awakening as a special vampire, is a mission that will occur in 3 weeks. The encounter with the vampire killer from the City of Mist, John Doe. Marette, are you okay? How's your throat? That first-year student should have held back, considering you could only use basic magic. But suddenly, Marette screams that she's thirsty and attacks her roommate. The next day, Josephine asks Corin why she did all that, mentioning that if she wanted to learn something, Josephine could give her private lessons. She then decides to punish Corin. While Corin is wondering if she should jump the wall, Cornlock suddenly appears at her window, startling her. He greets her and says he was just passing by and decided to bring a cake as a gift. Corin points out that coming here is against Academy rules, but Cornlock is just hanging on a tree, and besides, Josephine isn't around. Cornlock says he just wanted to check if Corin was okay. No scars, but she's been forbidden from leaving and receiving visitors for more than 4 days. She's a special demi-human, so he understands Josephine's concerns. Corin replies that during those 4 days, Josephine never showed up. Cornlock is surprised and falls from the tree. Cornlock promises to come back later and says he'll bring more food. Meanwhile, 2 former guardians and several teachers are rushing around the academy. Cornlock, your visit request has been denied, says the guard. Cornlock tells him that Josephine asked him to bring food and drinks for the guards, so the security officer accepts. However, After the first bite, the guard feels a stomach ache. Korenlock put a rune on the food to cause stomach pain and tells him there's a bathroom nearby. He volunteers to guard the door while waiting for the guard to return. Korenlock had his request to visit Marette denied, and Isabel, her friend, has disappeared. Korenlock is worried because it's still too early. When he finally enters the room and pulls back the sheets, Isabel is lying where Marette should be. After seeing the scars on her neck, there's no doubt Marette has awakened as the final boss, a vampire, 3 weeks ahead of the original timeline, to defeat the final boss of the first act. If you liked the video, leave a comment for me and also like the video. I really want to tell you this whole story.